I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime Magazine. I'm here today with Anna Collard, SVP Content Strategy and Evangelist at KnowBe4 Africa. KnowBe4 is the world's first and largest new school security awareness training and simulated phishing platform that helps you manage the ongoing problem of social engineering. To learn more about our sponsor KnowBe4, visit knowbe4.com. Also joining is my co-host Hillary McClure, VP of Multimedia Productions at Cybercrime Magazine. Anna, welcome. Great to have you with us today.
Thanks so much, Steve. It's an honor to be here.
Been following you for a while, since the popcorn training days. A lot of people in the industry know you. I've done a lot of research on this topic. We're here today to talk about women in cybersecurity. And joining us is Hillary McClure, our VP of Multimedia Productions, because much more importantly, she's interviewed so many people on this topic. So together, we're looking forward to the conversation.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Hillary.
So, Anna, I want to start off and just congratulate you. You were recently named as an IFSEC Global Influencer. They have a panel of judges. There's very few people who are on the list, and you're alongside some people we've recently interviewed in conjunction with KnowBe4. Devin Bryan, CISO at Carnival Corporation, Jason Lau, CISO at Crypto.com, and then some other people we've interviewed over the past year or so. Pamela Fusco, CISO at Splunk, Jane Franklin, CEO at Newstart. So a lot of great names. You've been on a lot of other lists as well, and we've seen you over the years. So what does it mean to receive so much industry recognition?
You know, I'd lie if I said it doesn't feel good. I mean, obviously, it feels amazing. What I do find quite strange, and maybe it's got to do with the whole 10,000 hours, I mean, in my case, 20,000 hours principle, that you get recognized after putting in the 10 years or 20 years of effort, because over the years, nobody ever, I don't think I was, I just did my work and I never really bothered with any of that. And then COVID happened, and from 2020, then these awards just appeared. And some of them, obviously, it's also because KnowBe4, they do a lot in helping promote the women that work for KnowBe4, and they sort of enter these awards. So it's not just, it doesn't come from nowhere, let's be honest. But the last one, the Influencer Award, that I wasn't even aware that I got nominated, so it came as a really huge surprise. And obviously it's a massive honor. I look up to a lot of the people, the ones that you just mentioned. I mean, Jane Franklin, I'm a huge fan of hers. So it's incredible to be named next to people that I look up to. And yeah, I don't know exactly why. I suppose it is, but once you work in an industry for 20 years, you get stuff done. And then eventually somebody takes note of it. And we've actually done a study in Africa across 450 teachers about a year and a half ago to find out, how can we attract more girls into the tech and the cybersecurity specific in the industry. And one of the things that came out of the study was that girls actually need to see other women as role models in these positions. And that's where these awards and recognitions and public sort of shout outs for women in technology, even though some people might say, well, I just want to be recognized for the work I do, not because I'm a woman in technology. But the reality is that there aren't enough women in tech. So it's good to provide platforms that then, give a stage to the women in the industry that other girls or the younger generation can look up to, or even not just the younger ones, but people from outside of our industry can look at and say, well, if she can do that, then I can also do that. And that's I think is a really positive side effect of these sort of public recognitions, which sometimes, I also feel it's a bit awkward, you just do your job and then you get recognition, but it's got that positive side effect to provide role models to people who might not even consider cyber as a career choice.
Wonderful. Well, Anna, you're reading our minds, I think, because you just listed out so many things that we want to dive in with you on in this conversation, because we are, of course, here to talk about women in cybersecurity, and a new report that Cybersecurity Ventures we just published and is sponsored by KnowBe4. And let me just read one statistic to kick off. So women presently hold around 25% of cybersecurity jobs globally. up from around 10% in 2013. And we're predicting that women will represent 30% of the global cybersecurity workforce by 2025, and that will reach 35% by 2031. And as you mentioned, you've been in the industry for 20 years. So curious, when you look back at, the progress of the past 20 years, but then also, where we are today and what lies ahead for us still, have we made progress? I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, so I think there's two comments that I have. The one is that these figures, they're probably either US-based or global average, because in Africa, or the region where I'm at, they are much worse. So we currently look at 9% of security professionals are female. And in fact, if you look at leadership positions, it's only 1%. So it's really very low. And that's something that needs to change. Compared to maybe 10 or 20 years ago when I first started, I don't actually personally find it has changed that much. Like maybe it's a little bit better, but in the circles that I'm at, it's still mainly white male dominated. But what has changed is the awareness about that. So in the last, I'd say 3-4 years or so, there's a lot more effort being spent on trying to change that, and companies actually implementing, DEI initiatives and committees. In fact, customers of ours that really by choice try and bring in women into the teams or in part of their leadership programs to try and attract, particularly in South Africa, women of color, to change that status quo. But it's quite challenging. It's difficult to find the candidates, and then also once they find them, to make sure that they feel comfortable enough in the environment. So it's something that still needs a lot of work in our region anyway.
Well, hopefully more young women, girls will watch this. They'll see you in South Africa. If not, then we're going to have a powwow with you, and we're going to come down to South Africa and change things, because that's just way too low. But I want to share a statistic that I found startling. We produced a documentary on KnowBe4. So we got to learn a lot about the company. We filmed your CEO, Stu, and a lot of founders of the company. And one of the things we learned is that about 50% of all of the jobs at KnowBe4 are filled by women. Is that true? I mean, I suppose it's true because we've seen it enough times, but tell us a little bit about the culture, Anna, insofar as women in cyber at KnowBe4.
Yeah, so that's definitely true. I can attest that. So when I founded Popcorn, it was before I had kids, but then I had kids early on in the startup phase. So I tended to hire or look for people that are like me. So in the beginning, our leadership team were all women. We were all the same age, and we all just had a baby. So it's really interesting how you end up hiring like a copy of yourself, which subconsciously is what happens. It's not that we go out there and say, I don't want to hire men or other groups. It's more that you relate better to people that are like you. And I think this is also what happened in the IT or security space, is that where you had more guys, and then they end up hiring people that are like them or that they can relate to. And it really needs a conscious or a policy that changes that. And what I like about KnowBe4 is that it is literally, it's very conscious. Like we have DEI committees, we've got rules and matrices that we are measured against at a regional level. Like in South Africa, this committee or the metrics go beyond just gender. It goes across, skin color, because our population, 80% of our population is of color. So we have to make sure that that's represented both in the normal population, but also the leadership. It doesn't help to have 50% women maybe in your team, but then all the leaders are male. That doesn't help, because people look up and they say, well, what's going on here? So I think that the nice thing is that at KnowBe4, from day one, like when we became part of it, it was an official policy to make sure that diversity and gender diversity, as well as other diversity, is included in their formal HR policies. So I can really commend the leadership there, and Stu in particular, and the HR team that is driving that.
Hillary just had a baby, and we're not letting her go anywhere, so don't get any ideas.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, he's 7 months now and he wants to walk on his own. So good for him.
Good. Yeah.
So, Anna, I want to mention another statistic for you, although it's not quite as promising. And you kind of touched upon it earlier. Looking at this year's Fortune 500 list of America's largest companies, women hold 85 of the CISO positions, just 85, not percent anything, just 85. So that's actually 17% is what that translates to, which is low. So when it comes to leadership positions, and as you mentioned, where you are in South Africa, or perhaps it was Africa as a total, it's about 1% with leadership being held by women. Of course, we aren't quite where we need to be. So love to hear your observations on that and your take on those numbers I just threw out at you.
Yeah, I mean, look, the African numbers, they're based off, I think they're at least 2-3 years old. And just personally, by observation, I do see more female leaders. And I know of a bunch of really amazing female CISOs just off the top of my head. But yeah, it's still definitely not as many as it should be. But I guess this takes time, it that doesn't happen. Like, we're aware of the issue, we try to change it, but it does take time. The reality is, being a woman and, becoming a mother, it has an impact on our careers. Like, there's no question about it. And that is still, I think, one of the number one reasons why we maybe don't step out of it, but at least we don't progress in the career ladder. We go sort of parallel for a few years, because it is really hard having a baby and trying to juggle a hectic leadership role. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's hard. And yeah, I guess even with all the awareness in the world and the willingness to change things, unless we have systemic opportunities with childcare and flexibility, which I suppose with the pandemic, things have changed and have become more flexible, and there's maybe more of an awareness also like the importance for mental health and all that, and support for the work from home and moms, etc. But I still think it's pretty tough having to juggle family life and a demanding career.
So, Anna, you're a cybersecurity leader, you're an influencer, you're a mom, you're so many different things, but you're an entrepreneur. And I'm fascinated by startup stories, and I'd love to hear yours. If you could just take us back in time to, Popcorn. Where did you get the idea for Popcorn Training? And just tell us a little bit about the startup before it, grew and ultimately became a KnowBe4 company.
Yeah, okay. I would have to actually take you way back when I was a kid, because I used to love drawing, and particularly cartoons, and art was like my thing. And then I tried to convince my dad to allow me to study art, and he was like, no, there's like no money in it. And I ended up having to do a degree in international economics. I also wanted to do languages, and he's like, no, there's no money. Anyway, so I ended up doing that, but I worked as any student, probably. I worked as a waitress, and then I found out that I was in Munich at the time, that Siemens offered a student part-time work opportunity that paid much better than waitressing. So I went there and ended up writing my thesis in security back in the day through Siemens. Then I ended up without a degree in technology, like I had an economics, like a BA equivalent. Ended up in the security industry because of that thesis that I wrote, and probably worked for, 8 years or so, and I still love drawing. And on honeymoon, I drew a whole cartoon story of these characters. While my husband was out sailing, I was on the beach drawing this funny story with these characters, and teaching, non-technical people how to not click on phishing emails. And I showed these drawings to one of my customers when I was back home, and they loved it. And that's how Popcorn started. It was literally a holiday idea where I combined my passion for art with what I knew. And they basically encouraged me to take this further and not just, draw a story, but animate it, build a learning management system. And I know I simplify this a lot because that was a 2-year progress. and a lot of hard work and sweat. But that's basically how the company started, through customers encouraging me. It was the right time, I suppose. I used story-based and training and a bit of humor to make something that was quite dry and more accessible. And that then allowed me to, with the input from my customers, to create additional material. And then eventually, I suppose KnowBe4 got wind of us. We managed to get onto Gartner's Magic Quadrant, which was one of the biggest milestones, I guess. And that's how KnowBe4 heard about us, and how it led to the acquisition finally in 2018.
So as Steve mentioned, and as we know, you're an entrepreneur and a security leader, and that makes you a role model for girls and young women. And we need more of them to be thinking about STEM in school, which you also mentioned earlier. And hopefully beyond school, it's cyber in college, and then for potential careers. There are so many initiatives over the past decade that have been happening for this cause. And most notably, one that comes to mind for us is the Girl Scouts of the USA, where hundreds of thousands of girls have earned cybersecurity badges. We didn't have those when I was a Girl Scout, but it's very cool. Do you think we are building up a stronger pipeline of girls who might be cyber fighters one day? I'm curious what you have to say on that.
I would love that. I think we have a lot to learn from the initiatives that you've got in the States. Here, it's still very grassroots. In fact, I had a conversation today with, two foundations and the British commissioner, who's interested in capacity building in the country. And digital skills or digital literacy is an issue for people in Africa. I mean, they all know how to use TikTok and WhatsApp as a consumer, but not necessarily how to use technology for good and to further and particularly, from a cybersecurity point of view, what the risks and the threats are. And it's a real issue because we have so many users on mobile devices, and they use it for banking, for financial transactions, etc. So there is a real need and a drive to bring that digital literacy to the schools, as well as like the colleges or universities, and that's not happening at the moment, not enough anyway in our region. And in fact, I mean, if you go to some of these underprivileged schools, they don't even have computer rooms. Like the kids don't even have access to technology. It's really quite, in some rural areas in Africa, they don't even have electricity, so we do have a very different challenge, I suppose. Nevertheless, like the same security challenge and the same need to teach these cybersecurity basics. And I would love to have like a similar program here locally, like your Girl Scouts. That sounds amazing.
Certainly a complex issue, so I'm glad that you made that point. I think that's important. To close out our conversation, Anna, is there anything that you'd like to share with girls and women thinking about cyber, who may be watching, or if they're already in the field who may be watching? Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I find cyber or security it's such an amazing area to get into, because even after 20 years, I can tell you I'm still a beginner. There's always new things that we can learn. If you're curious, you can't stop learning. Like today I have to talk about the metaverse and security. Tomorrow maybe about mindfulness and security. So there's continuous new trends and things that we learn, and where security has to fit in. So if you think of security as just as hacking, or I mean, the hacking is also cool, don't get me wrong, like it's great to do penetration testing and all that sexy stuff, but that's not only what security is about. So there's this wide subject that you can get into, from psychology to obviously technology, and it really is a field where we need people across all aspects, so a lot of the girls that I've met in schools here, they haven't even considered cyber as a career choice, because they just write it off as something that's, maybe too geeky or nerdy. But and we do have the geeks, I think I'm quite a nerd myself. But it's a really fascinating field to get into across so many domains, and you can even come at it from completely different angles. Like in my case, I didn't study technology. I had more of an economics background. We hired people from all different industries, like the publishing industry, because we just couldn't find the people, and as long as you have an attitude for learning and an interest and a curiosity, you'll love this field, because you never stop learning. And I guess that's my message, is to to join us if it sounds interesting. And you're obviously welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm always happy to give guidance if you're interested in specific, like certification path, or if you have questions about the field. Happy to share that.
Well, Anna, thank you so much for being with us here today and for all of your contributions to the industry. It's great to have you in our network, and hope we could do this again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor.
Hillary,
Nice to meet
you.
Hillary.
Anytime. Thank you again, Anna. Really appreciate it.
I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime Magazine. Joining us today was Anna Collard, SVP Content Strategy and Evangelist at KnowBe4 Africa. KnowBe4 is the world's first and largest new school security awareness training and simulated phishing platform that helps you manage the ongoing problem of social engineering. To learn more about our sponsor KnowBe4, visit knowbe4.com. You can keep up with all of our media at cybercrimemagazine.com.